Letter 8. Plato greets the relatives and friends of Dion. I will try to explain to you in detail, to the best of my ability, what plans you should adopt to achieve a genuine and maximum well-being. And I hope my advice will be useful not only to you, of course, primarily to you, but also, secondarily, to all Syracusans, and thirdly, even to your own adversaries and enemies, with the exception of those who have committed an unpardonable act, as such deeds are beyond redemption and purification. So, pay attention to what I am about to say. Now that the tyranny has been overthrown, you face all kinds of conflicts throughout Sicily regarding the same issue. Some want to regain power, and others want to make their escape from the tyrannical yoke permanent. The advice that usually seems wisest to most people is the one that causes the greatest possible harm to enemies and the maximum good for friends. But it is not at all easy for someone who causes much harm to others not to receive many harms back in return. You don't have to look far to see this clearly, just observe what has happened right there in Sicily. Some are trying to inflict damage, and others are defending themselves from those doing the damage. By relating this to others, you could give them useful lessons. Undoubtedly, examples are plentiful. However, what might benefit everyone, adversaries and friends alike, or cause the least possible harm to both, that is not easy to see, nor is it easy to carry out, even if seen. Giving advice and trying to explain it in this context feels more like a prayer to the heavens. So, let that prayer be made, since all our words and thoughts should always begin with the gods, and may it be fulfilled by suggesting reflections like the ones that follow. Since the war began, one could say that both you and your enemies have been continuously governed by a single family. Your fathers elevated them to power at a critical juncture, when Greek Sicily was under imminent threat of total collapse and being turned over to the barbarians by the Carthaginians. At that time, they chose Dionysius, considering him young and warlike, for the military campaigns that suited his character, and as a more experienced, older advisor, Hipparinus. They granted them full powers, they say, for the salvation of Sicily, with the title of tyrants. Whether you attribute the resulting liberation to divine providence, to the courage of the generals, or to both combined with the effort of the citizens of that time, let everyone assume what they wish, the fact is that that generation was saved. Having behaved this way, it was fair for everyone to be grateful to those who had saved them. If, in later times, the tyranny did not use the gift the city had given it correctly, it is already partially paying the penalty and should continue to do so. But what would be the appropriate penalty to impose on them, given the current situation? If you could easily escape their domination without great risks and efforts, or if they could easily regain power, it would not be possible to offer the advice that is about to be presented. But as things really are, both parties must consider and remember how many times each side has convinced itself that it was only a tiny bit away from achieving everything according to its desires, and that precisely this tiny bit has, in every instance, been the source of great and countless misfortunes. The goal is never reached. Instead, what previously seemed like the end connects with the beginning of something new, and this cycle of difficulties will eventually endanger both the tyrannical and the popular party with total ruin. In that case, should something occur, which, though dreadful, is logical, the total disappearance of the Greek language in all of Sicily will follow, as it will fall under the power and dominion of Phoenicians or Oscans. This is something all Greeks must strive to remedy with the utmost effort. If anyone has a more righteous and better plan than the one I am about to propose, let them make it known, and they can rightly be called a friend of Greece. In the present circumstances, I will try to express my opinion with absolute frankness and make an entirely fair presentation. Speaking as a kind of arbiter to both parties, the one that exercised the tyranny and the one that was tyrannized, as if they were separate individuals, I will repeat my usual advice. Once again, my words entail the same recommendation to any tyrant. Avoid tyranny in name and deed and adopt the form of a kingdom, if possible. And it is possible, as was effectively demonstrated by that wise and good man named Lycurgus. He, seeing that his relatives in Argos and Messenia had turned from kings into tyrants and provoked their own ruin and that of their respective states, fearing for both his homeland and his family, applied the institution of the Senate and the Ephors as a remedy, a healthy restraint on royal power. As a result, this power has been preserved with prestige for so many generations, because the law became the absolute master of men, and not men the absolute masters of the laws. This is what my words seek to instill in everyone now. To those who desire tyranny, that they reject and avoid at all costs what represents the happiness of insatiable and senseless people. That they seek to transform the regime into a kingdom and submit to royal laws, becoming worthy of the highest honors willingly granted by both men and the laws. And to those who aspire to a free regime and shun the yoke of slavery, convinced it is an evil, I would advise them to take care not to fall, due to the insatiable desire for untimely freedom, into the ailment of their grandfathers, an ailment caused by the excessive lack of authority suffered by that generation in its boundless passion for liberty. In fact, the Sicilians before the government of Dionysius and Hipparinus lived, or at least they believed so then, a happy life, a comfortable life in which they governed their governors. They even went so far as to stone, without judging them beforehand by any law, the 10 generals who preceded Dionysius in command, in order not to submit to any master, even one justly and legally imposed, and to be totally and absolutely free. As a consequence of this, the tyrannies arose. Tyranny and freedom, when carried to excess, are both a terrible evil, while maintaining a just measure, they are entirely good. Within the measure is submission to God, beyond the measure, submission to men. And God, for sensible people, is the law, for the senseless, it is pleasure. Given the nature of the issue, I recommend that Dion's friends communicate my exhortations to all Syracusans, which represent both my counsel and his. I will act as the interpreter of what he would say to you if he were alive and could speak. Well, someone might say, what is the content of the advice Dion gives us given the current situation? The following: first and foremost, Syracusans, adopt those laws that you see will not eagerly incline your spirits towards profit and wealth, but which, in the triple hierarchy of soul, body, and wealth, grant the highest value to the excellence of the soul, second place to that of the body, subordinate to the souls, and give the third and final place to the value of wealth, subordinate to both the body and the soul. The rule that achieves this will be a correctly established law for you, truly bringing happiness to those who follow it. But the language that calls the rich happy is in itself pitiful, foolish talk, characteristic of women and children, and makes those who believe it miserable. The truth contained in my exhortations, if you test what I am now telling you about the laws, you will recognize through experience, and that is certainly the most faithful comparison in any case. Once such laws are accepted, given that Sicily is in danger and you are neither conclusively victorious nor decisively defeated, what might be reasonable and convenient for all of you would be to settle on an intermediate solution. This applies both to those who avoid the harsh despotism of absolute power and to those who eagerly seek to regain it. The ancestors of the latter, at a specific moment, and this is of utmost importance, saved the Greeks from the barbarians, so that now there is an opportunity to discuss political matters. Had they been annihilated then, there would be no discussion or hope of any kind left. So now, grant some freedom within the regime of kingship, and grant others a responsible royal power, with the laws exerting absolute authority over both the other citizens and the kings themselves should they commit any illegality. Based on all this, with righteous and sound intention and with the help of the gods, establish my own son as king in the first place, due to a dual debt of gratitude. The one you owe me and the one you owe my father. Indeed, he liberated the city from the barbarians at that time, and I have liberated it twice from tyranny in this era, and you yourselves have been witnesses to that. Secondly, grant royal power to my father's namesake, the son of Dionysius, in return for the help he has now provided and the integrity of his character. Being the son of a tyrant, he voluntarily liberated the city, thereby securing for himself and his lineage an imperishable honor instead of a tyrannical, ephemeral, and unjust power. Thirdly, you must invite the one who now leads the enemy army, Dionysius, son of Dionysius, to be king of Syracuse, a willing king of a state that willingly accepts him as such, provided he is willing to adapt to a kingdom regime, out of fear of the capriciousness of fate, out of compassion for his homeland, for the abandoned temples and tombs, and to avoid the danger of utterly ruining everything because of his ambition, thereby becoming a laughingstock for the barbarians. These 3 kings, whether you grant them the prerogatives of the Spartan kings, or remove some, according to what you have commonly agreed upon, establish them through a procedure that is more or less the following, a procedure that has already been indicated to you before, but which you will hear once more. If the family of Dionysius and Hipparinus agrees to save Sicily, to end the disastrous present situation, receiving honors for themselves and their descendants, both now and in the future, convene for this purpose, as previously indicated, a commission formed by the people you desire, giving them full powers to set the terms of the settlement. They can be locals, or from abroad, or citizens and foreigners jointly, and in the number agreed upon. Upon their arrival, these commissioners should impose laws and a constitution in which being king means having authority in religious matters and in all other matters that pertain to those who have previously been public benefactors. But you must also elect guardians of the law with jurisdiction over war and peace, numbering 35, in agreement with the people and the assembly. There must be different courts for different cases, but jurisdiction over the death penalty and exile will belong to the 35. In addition to these, there must be judges selected from those who held magistracies in the respective preceding year, one from each magistracy, the one who appears to be the best and most just. These must judge all cases involving the death penalty, imprisonment, and exile of citizens during the following year. A king will not be permitted to judge such cases, as he is a priest who must remain untainted by deaths, imprisonments, and exiles. This is the system I planned for you while I was alive and which is still in my mind. And in those moments when I overcame my adversaries with your help, had the Furies not prevented it, under the guise of hospitable friendship, I would have established it as I had conceived. Subsequently, if things had gone according to my wishes, I would have reorganized the rest of Sicily, taking from the barbarians the part they now occupy, except those who fought for common freedom against the tyranny, and restoring the previous inhabitants of the Greek territories to their ancient ancestral homes. These same plans are what I now advise you all to unanimously adopt, execute, and invite everyone to collaborate in the undertaking. Whoever refuses should be considered an enemy of the community. This is not impossible. What is rooted in two souls and is the best thing anyone can discover through reflection is achievable, and whoever judges this impossible can be said to lack good judgment. The two souls I refer to are those of Hipparinus, the son of Dionysius, and my own son. Indeed, if these two agree, I assume that all other Syracusans who care about their homeland will share their opinion. So, after first offering prayers and honors to the gods and to all those who should be honored along with the gods, do not cease to persuade and urge friends and adversaries alike, kindly and in every possible way, until you manage to brilliantly and happily achieve what I have just told you, which is like a divine dream you've had while awake.